Okay, so hello dears. So this is the continuation, okay, of your pre-recorded lecture on microscopic exam. So for the past videos, we have already discussed the first type of constituents sa imuhang urinary sediment, and that is that are your cells, right? From blood cells, RBCs, WBCs, epithelial cells, microorganisms, and spermatozoa, diba? So those are the different cells. Now, our next video will now discuss another urinary constituent, which is your casts, okay? And your casts can have different types. It could be hyaline, cellular cast, by the name itself, cellular, it contains a lot of cells, okay? It could be different cells. Fatty cast, granular could be coarse or fine. And then waxy cast, and lastly, you have the broad cast, okay? So we'll go individually sa different types of casts, okay? All right, so first, we'll discuss what are casts, okay? Now, casts are considered to be the only elements that are in the urine that are unique to the kidneys because, again, these casts can only be found or can only be created in the kidneys. Okay, so other body fluids like, CSF ba, semen, pericardial, peritoneal, amniotic, walay casts ma-form. Okay, so if ang question is what is considered to be the most unique element found in the urine that is only found in the kidneys, or the only element in the kidneys, in the urine that are most unique to the kidneys, you have the casts, okay? So again, asa sila ma-form? Primarily, usually, naa siya ma-form sa DCT, distal convoluted tubules, and collecting ducts. Okay. Now, yung appearance, guys, it's usually tubular, na ay parallel sides, and somewhat rounded ends. So, parallel sides, somewhat rounded ends. Okay? So, meron siya pahaba. meron siya bun. Okay? Basically, ngano inana yung shape because it takes into the form or it follows the form or the shape of the tubules kung asa siya na-create. Okay? Munang inana iyahang form. Okay? And it may contain additional elements, again, depending kung unsay present sa tubule, kung asa siya na-form. May it be cells, may it be bacteria, may it be, normal constituents ba na naa sa tubules. And somewhat, kung unsa man gani ang sulod niya na cells, then that could indicate already kung unsa naitabo sa tubules, di ba? Kung may RBCs dito, so it could indicate na may bleeding sa tubules. Kung may WBCs or bacteria, meaning na infection within the tubules, inana. So that's the appearance of casts, okay? Again, ano siyang inana, it represents the shape of the tubular lumen or kung asa siya na-form, okay? Composition niya is mainly tam-horsefall protein, okay? Please take note, tam-horsefall protein or uromodulin. Now, uromodulin or tam-horsefall protein, ang old name niya is tam-horsefall protein. Karon, it's now called uromodulin. Now, uromodulin is a normal protein released by your RTEs, okay? It's a normal protein released by your RTEs, okay? Renal tubular epithelial cells. Uromodulin is also found in mucous threads, okay? This is in the later part. That's also the constituent of your mucous threads, okay? It's a normal protein, again, released by your renal tubular epithelial cells. And it's the main protein also that constitutes your casts, okay? Again, that's the main protein, and again, with or without additional elements. That would depend, again, unsay nahitabo sa tubules. Kung naabay bleeding, alright, so na RBCs na ma-incorporate. Kung na infection, again, pwedeng na WBCs or bacteria na ma-incorporate, okay? Inana na siya. Alright. Okay. And the presence of cast in urine is termed as cylindruria, okay? Cylindruria. Alright. The presence of cast in urine, cylindruria. Alright. Now, there's also what we call your cylindroids. Okay? Now, unsay difference nila sa casts? Ang difference lang is kung asa sila na-create. Okay? So, here is again your nephron. As you can see, di ba, your glomerulus, the PCT, the loop of Henle, DCT, and then collecting duct. So, in a nutshell, inana ang imuhang nephron, di ba? So, first is the casts. Okay? So, ang casts, again, usually ma-form siya between the DCT and the collecting duct. Okay? So, pero ang major site yun is usually the distal convoluted tubule, okay? So, if di rin siya ma-form, it's termed as a cast, and usually iyahang shape is tubular, again, na ay parallel sides, rounded ends. And again, forms in the DCT and collecting duct. Whereas imong cylindroids, usually ma-form siya in the ascending loop of Henle and the DCT. So, ma-form siya usually at the junction of the ascending loop of Henle and the DCT. So, ascending loop of Henle and DCT. That is why na siya tapered ends. Because as you can see, ang ascending loop of Henle, padunong sa DCT, medyo na ay pagka-tapered. Okay? Muna siyang, ang cylindroids, similar to casts, pero na siya ay tapered ends. But they have the same significance. Okay? Because again, they both come from the inside of your kidneys or inside of your nephrons, di ba? So the appearance of this in your urine could indicate na na-adjure problem within your tubules or within your nephrons, okay? But ang point lang is, ang difference sa cylindroids and casts, your cylindroids are created or are made at the junction of the ascending loop of Henle and your distal convoluted tubule, whereas imong casts, munang it's created or it's made in the DCT or collecting duct. That is why ang shape sa imong casts quite tubular, rounded ends, whereas imong cylindroid tapered. Okay, all right. But again, they have the same significance. And again, munang the presence of casts in urine is your cylindruria. Now, let's discuss first how the casts are made. Okay. So, first is, let's say, I'll draw a tubule. Oh my God, baot na ba dyan kayo kung mo-create? Okay, now, let's say this is the tubule lang of the distal convoluted tubule. Now, di ba daghan na siya mga RTEs, dira, gapalibot, of course, because that's a tubule. So, ma-release na sila uromodulin, okay? Now, uromodulin, what happens is, so mag-release sila uromodulin, it will now form a cast matrix, okay? Alright, so muna siya ang cast matrix. Okay, after ma-release ang uromodulin, it now, it's first loose, meaning dili pa kayo siya na naka-intact. Okay, now at this part, dira na masulod ang mga different cell constituents, may it be RBC, bacteria, and depending again kung unsay naa sa tubule at the time that it was created, at the time that the cast was created. Okay, so after na po na masulod na ang mga tubules, okay, alright, or after masulod ng mga cells rather. So what happens is ma-further na po niya og you know, mag-create sila mga fibrils, mga strands together ang proteins until ma-form na nila ang cast matrix together with the cells na na-incorporate dito. And then all together, kanis sila together, ma-release na siya sa imuhang urine. Okay? So maato na siya sa collecting duct and then finally sa imuhang urine. Okay? Muna siya in a nutshell, murag a summary of how the casts are created. Okay? I hope na gets lang ang point. But ang main niya na constituent good is uromodulin, which is a normal protein released by your RTEs. Alright? Okay. So, yeah, muna siya, in a nutshell, ato ang cast formation from the tubules padulong sa urine. Okay? Alright. Now, we go na to different types of casts. First is your hyaline cast. So, your hyaline cast is basically, guys, parang the template of all the other types of casts because it's basically composed ng of uromodulin. It's colorless and homogeneous matrix and low iyahang refractivity or low iyahang refractive index. Okay? So, that is why, again, it's considered to be the template for the other casts. Okay? Most of your other types of casts, nag-starts like hyaline. Okay? And it's actually quite normal to see your hyaline cast, mga 1 to 2 per HPF. Because again, you know, uromodulin is a normal part of the kidney, normal protein released by the RTE. So it's quite normal po to see hyaline casts, maybe 1 to 2 sa imuhang urine usahay, okay? But yung pathological significance also, it could be glomerulonephritis, meaning inflammation of your glomerulus, na bleeding, pyelonephritis, infection of the glomerulus, bacterial infection, chronic renal disease, congestive heart failure, stress and exercise. Congestive heart failure, when you say congestive heart failure, magod, parang dili na kayo maayo mo pump o blood, okay, ang heart, padulong sa kidneys. Therefore, wala kayo blood na masulod sa kidneys, okay, so na urine stasis or dili kayo ma-filter. That is why, pwede siya makakreate og hyaline cast, okay, so magpadayon siya po siya, increase iyang uromodulin production and until ma-form siya hyaline cast, I think. If wala ko na sa akong explanation sa congestive heart failure, okay? And stress and exercise, again, which can be normal, as I've mentioned, the release of hyaline cast, which is brought about by stress and exercise, okay? Because again, depende sa pag-release sa uromodulin. So maybe through increased stress and exercise, increase po ng production sa uromodulin, therefore, makakreate siya og hyaline cast, okay? So basically, again, it could be pathologic or non-pathologic. So again, normal, usually 0 to 2 per LPF. Basta casts gani, guys, under LPF ta or low power ta mag-examine because these are really big na mga constituents. So makita na gyud siya. Okay? All right. Ayan. So these are example of casts. As you can see, always remember na naa siya parallel sides. Para siya mahibal na cast, makita nyo mo siya na matrix. Murag, elongated yun siya, na parallel sides and quite rounded. Ang hyaline, as you can see, di ba, HPO niyang LPO hyaline, it's quite clear, like wala yun siya sulod, like limpyo kay siya, okay? Alright, per 9 times na yung mga usa ka RTE siguro na makitaan, sulod, appeal sa hyaline cast or other cells, that's not quite significant kay usara may naa. Dili man daghan. Kaya of course, that could be part of the normal processes sa sa body. And if na RTE man gani, then it's because asa man gikan ang uromodulin, di ba? Nagtapot ba ang uromodulin or ang cast initially sa mga RTEs. So kung pag-disintegrate at or pag-remove, base na yung mga RTEs na na-appeal, so that's still quite normal, okay? If usually usara or duha na RTEs masulod sa hyaline cast. Okay, so that's again the first one. Hyaline cast, usually the template of all the other casts. Usually, dira sila mo start, okay? Next, we go na to cellular cast. So it would depend on the cells na naasa cast, okay? So let's say hyaline sa una. But then na may bleeding within your tubules, so it could be na naay RBC na ma-incorporate dito, which would now produce your RBC cast, okay? And your RBC cast, ang point lang ana is RBCs ang naa sa sulod. It has an orange-red color which indicates, again, bleeding within the nephron. So it's very significant because, again, naay bleeding within the nephron. Identification error niya is RBC clumps. Muna siya difference, guys. Walay cast matrix. RBC clumps usually mag-ana-ana ra gyud na sila. Wala sila ga-follow og gin-ana na shape para sa cast, okay? When you say an RBC cast, naagyo na siya katong parallel sides and then rounded and then dito na naka-incorporate ang mga RBCs. Okay? Alright. So, ang RBC clumps, wala gyud siya, dili siya definite iyahang shape. Okay? Walay parallel ends, walay parallel sides, walay rounded ends. Okay? Alright. But that could be an error as for RBC cast. And again, clinical significance, glomerulonephritis, the very important. Glomerulonephritis, again, inflammation of your glomerulus, could be na glomerular bleeding. Okay, and strenuous exercise, that would be if intense na kayo mo pag-exercise, which could lead to maybe some bleeding, ginagmay sa imong kidneys, alright? So, makakause po siya RBC casts. Okay, but pinaka-important ko niya na significance is glomerulonephritis. Okay, alright. And for WBC cast, same ragyapon siya point sa RBC cast, but instead of RBCs, sulod sa cast, WBCs. And usually, masina siya within bacterial infection of your nephrons or sa tubules. Muna siya pyelonephritis. When you say pyelonephritis, there is bacterial infection within your tubules, sa tubules mismo, sa sulod. Okay? And acute interstitial nephritis, if na WBC cast sa acute interstitial nephritis, unsa to na WBC gani usually, di ba? Eosinophils, yeah? Or if na magani WBC cast because of acute interstitial nephritis, walay bacteria na makitaan usually. Because again, this is not caused by bacteria. Pero for pyelonephritis, usually, na ay bacterial cast po na makitaan or and WBC casts. Okay? Alright. So here are the, this is your RBC cast. As you can see guys, no, naa siya in a way parallel sides ragyapon and then rounded ends. And then na-incorporate ng RBCs sa sulod. Muna siya point sa RBC cast na ay cast matrix. Okay? Alright. And then for WBC cast, same ragyapon, disintegrating the RBC cast, meaning disintegrate nangatangtang na itong mga RBCs na nagtapot sa cast. So as you can see, naana po yung mga RBC sa palibot. One of the way to distinguish po a cellular cast is if nakay cast na makita diri, okay, lantawa po unsay mga cells na siyang palibot. So if nakay makita ng RBCs and then naay cast po diri na murag RBC cast, then that could mean na RBC cast gyud ni siya. Okay? And same po sa WBC casts, if you can see na wala pa WBC, RBC cast gyapon din. So as you can see, if RBC cast ni siya, so sa palibot po you can see RBCs. Okay? Inana. So murag in a way, murag ang background nimo hang pang-confirm gyud sa identity of the cast if medyo nagduwa-duwa pa ka. Okay? Alright. And same WBC cast, as you can see, diba, na po yung parallel ends. Alright? And then na ay rounded. Parallel sides, rounded ends. As you can see, na po yung mga free WBCs. Muna siya itsura of mga clumps na kumpul-kumpul ra sila. But wala dyo'y definite na, shape or matrix na parallel sides and rounded ends. Unlike ani. Okay? Alright, so again, WBC cast na po yung mga free WBCs. Alright, and next one is disintegrating WBC cast. As nag-prolong as nagka-old na gani siya, pwede na siya mo disintegrate. Mga wala na itong mga cells, cellular constituents sa cast. Okay? And this is a WBC cap. As you can see, wala siya cast matrix. Dili parallel iyahang ends, iyahang sides, dili po rounded. As you can see, di ba, na-gets na ang point sa wala siya cast matrix. Dili kayo klaro iyang shape, di ba? So, kumpul-kumpul na yun siya. Okay, and this could be used or this could be an identification error for WBC cast. Basta gani, maglibog mo if cast ba na siya or dili. Always look if naa ba siya katong shape na to. Parallel sides, rounded ends. Okay? Alright. Ayan. Next type of cellular cast is epithelial. Of course, your RTE cells, again, dito gikan ang uromodulin. Now, if daghan king RTE cells na sulod na sa cast, that could mean an adjoy damage sa imuhang tubules. Kaya daghan namang RTE cells ang nasulod sa cast, okay? But if mga 1 or 2 lang, that could be normal, considered normal. Because again, your uromodulin is attaching to the RTEs, di ba? So, while the cast is made, basin pag tangtang sa cast, pag excrete sa cast, na ay usa or duha ka RTEs na maapil, okay? But if inani daghan na jud kaayo siya, then that could be na naay damage sa imuhang renal tubules, okay? And iyang identification error is WBC cast since quite same ang appearance sa WBCs and RTEs. But ang difference lang is if stain mo ang WBCs, usually ang nucleus di ay eccentric ang nucleus sa imuhang RTEs and medyo mas dako ang RTE cells compared sa WBCs. Okay? Alright. Ang pinaka-significance na ganyan is na damage sa imuhang renal tubules. Okay. So here's an example of an epithelial RTE cast. As you can see, dagko gyud kaayo siya. Okay? Diba? Compared naman to WBCs. And nadya po siya shape. Diba? Pahaba ra gyapon siya. Mura lagi siya hotdog bun. Diba? Okay? And bilirubin stain, usually makita nato ni siya in viral hepatitis daw. Okay? Viral hepatitis na because of viral hepatitis, nagka-tubular necrosis na. Okay? Which led to the formation or the absorption of bilirubin sa RTEs. Okay? And then na-incorporate sa cast. Okay? Alright. Ayan. Okay. Next, we have the fatty cast. When you say fatty cast, fat droplets ang nasa sulod. And na mga oval fat bodies attached. Asa ganini makitaan, massive proteinuria, massive lipiduria. Of course, ang clinical significance niya is in nephrotic syndrome. Usually, nephrotic syndrome. And if na mga like fatty casts, ang sa background po, makakita po ng mga oval fat bodies. Inanara na siya. Again, lang tama po yung mga background to determine kung saan ang mga cells na dito. Again, massive or a major clinical significance niya, nephrotic syndrome, but na po yung uban toxic tubular necrosis, DM, or crush injuries. Now, yes. So, again, fat droplets or fat, diba, fatty cast. So, unsay mga different types of fats na pwedeng naa siya, you have your, diba, triglycerides, neutral fats, or cholesterol. And how do we differentiate the three? We stain it with Sudan 3 or oil red O. Unsay mas stain sa Sudan 3 o oil red O? The triglycerides and neutral fats. And kinsa tong Maltese cross in polarized microscopy, you have cholesterol. Okay, all right. So that's for fatty casts. And again, as I mentioned, the fatty cast should be accompanied by other lipid elements and proteinuria para makaingon jud ka na nephrotic syndrome siya. Okay? All right. So here's an example of a fatty cast. As you can see, na mga fat globules, all right? And if you want to determine if unsay ang fats, again, you can stain it with Sudan 3 or oil red O or other mga lipid stains. All right? And if mas stain ganin siya, meaning ang fats at or lipids are neutral fats or triglycerides. Okay. All right. So that's for fatty casts. So we'll now continue to the next for the next part or the next type of cast, we have the granular cast. Now, before we continue the eye with this new type of cast, I'll have to balik ta sa WBC casts ay kay nalimot ko emphasize dito. For WBC casts, okay, WBC casts are considered to be the primary distinction, okay, in urinalysis finding between pyelonephritis and cystitis, okay? Pyelonephritis versus cystitis, okay? Now, sir, sa day na, pyelonephritis, again, as I mentioned, pyelonephritis is bacterial infection within the tubules, okay, or within the nephron, okay? Okay, please take note of that. Now, for cystitis in direct translation good is inflammation or infection of the bladder, urinary bladder. But this could also mean lower UTI, okay, or lower urinary tract infection. Basically, muna itong UTI na nahibalaan, urinary tract infection. Sa lower part of your urinary tract, so bladder, sa urethra, na. Okay, now, unsay pulo sa WBC casts. Take note again, asa ma-form ang casts within your tubules. Now, your pyelonephritis, di ba, it's an inflammation or infection within the tubules. So, asa makitaan ang WBC casts in a patient with pyelonephritis or cystitis? Of course, sa imuhang patient with pyelonephritis. Okay, so naa siya WBC casts because again, the infection is within the tubule. All right? Whereas a cystitis, na ba ni siya WBC cast? Wala. Wala. Because again, the patient or the infection is not, it's in the lower urinary tract. Dili na siya sa kidneys mismo or inside the kidneys. That is why your WBC casts ang considered to be the primary distinction between pyelonephritis and cystitis because they have the same findings sa imong UA na po ni WBCs, bacteria, na po ni WBCs, and bacteria. Because both of them, they are bacterial infection. Difference lang sa site sa urinary tract. Ang pyelonephritis within the kidneys mismo, within the nephron. Ang imuhang cystitis, it's just in the lower urinary tract. Okay, so unsay primary distinction, unsa na urinalysis finding ang maka-differentiate between pyelonephritis and cystitis, your WBC casts. Okay? Because again, casts made within the tubule. So specific yun siya na na-form dito. Okay? Alright, I hope that's clear. I just have to emphasize kay basin makaligtaan sa lecture or dili makitaan. So it's important sa mga case studies or in the lab practice mismo. So yeah. Alright. Okay. Ayan. So now we'll continue to the next type of casts. You have the granular cast. Now your granular cast can exist in two forms. It could be coarse or fine. Now coarse meaning medyo rugged or medyo rough iyang appearance, whereas fine, smooth iyang appearance. Alright? Now, asa gikan granular cast. Before that, according to Strasinger, you don't have to distinguish between the two because they are of the same significance daw. So you don't have to really be specific na fine granular ni siya, coarse granular. But there are labs na kailangang i-specify depending on the lab gyapon. Depending po na the medtech. Ako mismo, I want to specify if makaya. But if dili man gani, okay na daw na kutubra granular. Okay? Okay, nagdili ka mo exert og effort sa mga taong dili po mo reciprocate. Char, ano naabot ato na level? Okay, anyway. So again, coarse and fine, yeah. Based on their appearance. Now, asa gikan ning granules niya. In normal conditions daw, in normal metabolic processes, these granules came from lysosomes na gina-release or gi-release sa RTE. Okay, in normal metabolic process. So it's normal to find some granules in a hyaline cast, okay, in normal patients. But in pathologic conditions, usually this granular cast appeared from the disintegration, okay, of the cellular elements na naa sa cast after a long period of time, okay? So usually, therefore, kaning cast or granular cast, for it to happen, it should be present in the tubules for a long time. Because again, it's through the disintegration of the cells na naa dito. Okay? Alright, so that's again for granular cast. Okay? Alright? Identification error, clumps of small crystals or columnar RTE cells. Because again, these appearances nila, kaning mga identification error, they may appear as granular. Okay? And basin murag itsura siyang cast. But again, please take note your casts, na siya parallel sides and round ends. Okay? Na siya cast matrix. And again, significance niya could be non-pathologic stress and exercise. Or again, clinical significance, glomerulonephritis and pyelonephritis. Example, na WBC casts aning pyelonephritis. And then, nadugay siya within the tubules, wala siya na release dayon, the WBCs will disintegrate. Munang mahimo na lang siyang murag granules. Ang appearance niya, munang mahimo siyang granular cast. Okay? Alright. Ayan. Okay. Now, if your granular cast, magpadayon na gyapon siya sa tubules, dili siya ma-release, it will disintegrate further. And ang mahimo na siyang shiny yung appearance, no? Mahimo na siyang medyo, kaya na-disintegrate naman tanang mga materials or tanang cells na naa dito, medyo mo clear out iyang surface, iyang appearance, munang mahimo na siyang waxy cast, okay? So your waxy cast, highly refractile, with jagged edges and notches. Oh, na siya notch. Okay, sana all na. Char. Sana all na. Naka-ano pong notch. Tara, joke lang. Anyway, so na siya jagged edges and notches. So na siya mga example, di ba, atong cast is parallel sides and rounded ends. Na siya notch, ana. Okay? Progpain ana. Alright, na notch at the side. Okay, like, na siya notch at the side. Okay, dili na ako magbinas. Those Mark Rodney. Okay, alright, okay. Ayan. So again, na siya jagged edges and notches because as you know, di ba, gikan siya disintegration, as magpadayon siya pag disintegrate, pwedeng ma-disintegrate po diyang sides and ana, or magka-shrink siya or magka-disintegrate po siya mismo. Munang na ay mga jagged edges and notches. Okay. So yung identification error may be fibers and fecal material because na yung mga fibers na highly refractile po, na waxy ang appearance. Okay? Alright? And clinical significant stasis, meaning the urine is, na-slow na yun ang urine. So basically, what happens is, dili nakagawas ang urine because of this cast, or what happens is, ang tubules mismo kay naguba na. Okay? Munang, usually makitan po siya in mga chronic renal failure. Because again, renal failure, the kidneys are not functioning well, the tubules are not functioning well. Therefore, dili sila kapagawas og urine, okay, na stasis. So what happens is, maipon tanan nitong mga casts, alright, na mag-disintegrate po siya, kay dili man ma-release tanan ang cast. Okay? That's why waxy cast na ma-appear. Okay? Alright. And furthermore, pag yun, wala pa din. Picture pa din. Okay. So, granular cast, diba, fine. And then, as you can see, medyo smooth yung appearance. And then, coarse. So, as you can see, medyo same sa appearance, no? So, muna iingon sa stress na you don't have to distinguish between the two. Okay? You could always put it as granular cast na lang yun. Okay? Alright. And kani with an RBC. So, you have to look at the sides pa rin, at the background, kung saan mga cells, mga free cells ang naasa background, which could help you identify kung unsa siya na cast, cellular cast gikan pa. Okay? Alright. And you have your waxy, di ba? As you can see, stained siya. And as you can see, waxy, medyo clear na siya, no? As you can see, granular pa lang siya, pero nagka-disintegrate siya to waxy. Kaya as you can see, medyo nagka-clear ang edges, ang sides niya. Medyo nagkawala, nag-start ihang mga granules. Okay? Alright. Pero kanina siya, klaro kayong waxy. Di ba? Okay. Alright. Okay. And ang pinaka-last na to is your broadcast, which is known as your renal failure casts. Because dagko na kayo siya na cast. Wide na gyud kaayo siya. That means tubular distension na gyud, meaning ang tubules kay ni enlarge na. Okay? Kay meaning medyo murag di na gyud sila function well, nag-hypertrophy na ang tubules in a way. Kay ang dili na, di ba, urinary stasis, nagpundo na lang ang urine. Kay dili na pagawas ang ihi. So of course, your tubules tend to enlarge na. So mo enlarge po na imuhang cast dito. Munang renal failure cast siya or your broadcast. Identification are same sa fibers or fecal material. Clinical significance, extreme urine stasis, meaning intense na gyud ang pag-stoppage sa imong ihi. Dili na jud ka flow imong ihi. That's why mo enlarge ang tubules. So mo take po sa shape sa broadcast ang enlarged tubules. Okay? Munang broad iyahang appearance. And of course, renal failure. Same reason. Wala na nag-function imong tubules. So here's an example of a broad cast, okay? And usually, ang granular and waxy casts usually ang mahimong broad. Pero any type of cast daw can go to a broadcast. Broadcast? Wow. Broadcasting. Broadcast, okay? Lahi ng broadcast. O broadcast, okay? Alright, so, yeah. Any type of cellular cast from RBCs, WBCs, mahimong broad. Pero most of the time, since before the broadcast is granular and waxy man, so padulong gid siya dito. Ang granular waxy, usually dito daw ang origination sa broadcast. Okay? Alright, ayan. Okay, and we also have the ganina wala na mention here, the mixed cast, mixed cellular, meaning there are two types of cells sa usa ka cast. Example, you have WBCs and bacterial casts. Okay, usually makitaan na incorporate siya in the same cast. Okay, so in payalo. Pero, you have to, if na mixed cellular cast, you always have to find po predominant na cast. Like, one cellular gud na dito. So, example, if na kay WBCs and bacterial, WBCs bacterial cast na makitaan, which is a mixed, you always have to look for a different cast po na predominant lang. So, you have to look for a WBC cast ba? Or a bacterial cast. Meaning, usara gyud ka cell ang nasa sa cast. Okay? Dili mixed. Okay? So, if you have a mixed cellular cast, look for, in the urine sediment or sa microscopic field, look for a different type of cast na predominantly usara ka cell ang naa. Okay? Or, usara ang constituent niya. May it be WBC ba or bacterial. Example rani. Okay? Alright. So, those are your casts. I hope medyo clear lang ang information. Don't forget again sa itong primary distinction na to between pyelonephritis and cystitis unsa na urinary finding, the WBC casts. What is the major protein constituent of your casts? Uromodulin or tam-horsefall protein. Asa pa lain makita ng uromodulin unsa na urinary constituent? The mucous threads later. And unsa pa to? Asa na site sa imong nephron usually makitaan or the primary site where the casts are made, the distal convoluted tubule or sa collecting duct. Pero primarily sa distal convoluted tubule. The presence of casts in the urine are termed as cylindroria. Alright, okay. So for the next part of the video for microscopic exam, we'll now go to the different crystals. Okay, alright. So I'll see you on our next video on this topic. Okay?